So what is your definition of the blue economy?
The definition of the blue economy, to 98% of people, the definition of blue economy is beer, shrimp, and a view. They're sitting there at a rental house and they're enjoying the shrimp and the beer, having conversation with their friends with a great view. Um, the actual definition of blue economy, and this is sort of encapsulating it, there are various official ones. The World Bank has one, the European Union has one, the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration has one. And to simplify all that is the blue economy is every scientific, commercial, and cultural activity from the tide line to the deep sea. Everything that happens in that blue band is blue economy. And that includes tourism. Now, there's another sub definition, and that's the blue commercial economy, because that does not include tourism. That's about all the businesses that are serving all the other industries in that sort of water space. And then the even tighter definition, the one I work under with my group, Cape Fear Ocean Labs, is blue tech economy. And that's all the tooling and science and engineering that goes into all the mechanical products, the data analytics that support that blue commercial economy. And it is something where a lot of people may actually be in the blue economy, but they don't identify that way. You know, if I work on at a port and I load ships and take containers off, I'm part of the blue economy. I may not see myself that way. If I am a researcher counting seagrass or looking for some sort of biological specimen that cures cancer, I'm part of the blue economy. So the simplest thing is any business activity that occurs between the shoreline and the deep sea.
So the word economy sounds like growth, and it's a very positive kind of growth. How does the sustainment or the um, making our environment healthier kind of fit into that definition too? Because you can do things for the economy that may near term that may damage long term that economy. How does that either that temporal view or that kind of that environmental aspect come into that thinking?
Well, that's one of the reasons why, as Cape Fear Ocean Labs, we're so focused on the blue tech side, is because in terms of environmental sustainability, and even more so, the word now is resilience. Mm-hmm. While people continue to argue, the science is, dramatically clear. Climate change is a real thing. It's really accelerating, and it has real impacts. 70% of the Earth is oceans, of which only 5% of that has ever been actually explored, other than what the Navy is not telling us. And the ocean is one of the key, it is the key element that needs to be better understood to address climate change issues. We just got through with the Hurricane Ida and the acceleration and things like that. You need devices, whether it's people like the hurricane spotter planes. There's a lot of technology that goes into those planes. And there's a huge effort by a variety of federal agencies, nonprofits, businesses to develop unmanned, autonomous, submerged, surface, aerial, and orbital drones to create sensor arrays so you can monitor the ocean, monitor what happens on the ocean, and how it impacts land, communities, more than just property. How is it impacting those wetlands? So it's about building the technology around that impact of climate change, which is one thing. And then there's the businesses that actually still have to operate for our quality of life that go through that climate change. Example, right now, they're changing fueling on ships. You know, bunker fuel is a very nasty thing, but now it's about batteries. Is it liquefied natural gas? Is it hydrogen, blue hydrogen? Offshore wind provides an infinite supply of energy once you get it up and going. So it's a very layered thing in terms of how ocean technologies help both property and the natural environment learn to live in balance.
So this overarching concept, and you've given some really good definitions and kind of focused in, why is this important? I mean, why is this concept important to thinking about growth or thinking about strategy if, you know, for a country, for a city, you know, for an industry, why is that important? Or why do you think it's important?
Well, ocean economy is not necessarily a new thing. As a matter of fact, there were 400 years of human history where ocean economy discovered the world. I mean, ocean economy literally kept the European economy during the age of exploration, you know, from basically the 1400s to the 1800s. That's what drove their entire economy. Now we're in a situation where, while that would, in that day, sea travel, seafaring was the space travel of its time, we are now in a place where the technology has matured so we can actually have more sustainable fisheries. We can actually have cleaner container ships that move through. And all those are jobs. All that is about job creation. For example, right now, everybody's focused on electric automobiles, you know, Teslas and auto driving and all electric Ubers. I mean, they've even got pizza delivered in you know, robocars, which is idiocy. But anyway, but all those are, there are very high-tech professional jobs involved in that, and there are very high-skilled trade jobs in building all that out. And there is the opportunity, as opposed to if you can't deliver pizza because there's now a robocar doing it, well, why don't you get out of the water and go build something or clean up something? That's another job. And that's really the angle here. Is it's the probably the greatest and highest value underdeveloped, and I know that can be a dangerous word for people, but finding the balance between a sustainable environment means you have to have high-paying jobs so people can afford to sustain their environment. And the blue economy fits perfectly in both buckets.
How does Wilmington, North Carolina, apply this concept of blue economy for its future?
Okay, Wilmington it has an interesting luxury of gifts, vectors that make it highly competitive, not only as a national, but as a global site for a blue tech business cluster. It's right next door to the second largest coastline river estuary in the nation. It has a large coastal plain that's relatively shallow where things can be done. It has direct blue ocean, Gulf Stream access. It's a straight line to Bermuda for open sea trials and testing of devices. It has a regional university. It has a well-respected community college for workforce training. and it has the state's port. Um, and that's research, workforce, and a vehicle for deployment. Um, and then it may seem silly, but it's only 1 hour's airtime from DC. And the amount of money that's available across the federal government now, blue economy, blue tech, is one of the top 3 spending priorities of all government agencies. Sometimes it's going under different names and different programs. But when you have access where you can fly down program managers and congressmen and those kind of things and give them a product demonstration on Friday and have them home before dinner, that's a real competitive advantage.
So that if you stand in a place of 15 years from now, 20 years, 25 years from now, what does that future state look like? If this coalition of the willing and everybody kind of comes together to bring that identity, if you would, of a future Wilmington, what does that look like from your perspective?
From a pure business point of view, the ability to become, I know it's an overused term, but center of excellence in blue technology innovation with a real cluster, a mini blue Silicon Valley, you will have something that's very rare in the world. And there's a premium associated with that. And that allows you to diversify your tax base, invest in all the parks and sidewalks and bicycle trails and all the cool stuff we all want, but we got to figure out a way to pay for it. And this is something that fits that bill, and it's got a relatively tight footprint. It's not like the big industrial. It's not a Pittsburgh steel factory, right?
Right.
And some of the wages are the highest in the country. I mean, we're talking like computer programmers are on average between 150 and 190 for high-end companies. The technical skills in blue tech are comparable to that, equal to or comparable. And it gives a sense of identity around something that's the most defining characteristic of Wilmington, the water. I mean, when people are sitting there, people outside of Wilmington, if you ask 30 friends, you say Wilmington, what's the first thing you say? And 20 of them will say Delaware. Another 7 to 8 will say never heard of it. And 2% with people with connections or something will say, oh yeah, it's a pretty cool little beach town. When you get into North Carolina, people are a little less charitable. They just basically say it's lazy beach town at the end of the road. We don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And locally, because there's this sort of tie line between sort of the old guard and the in movers, and they haven't really figured out who's going to be in charge and how they're going to be in charge and what would they do if they were in charge. So there's a little, but the key thing is it can put Wilmington actually with an identity on the map that other people identify with, which is not the current situation now. So when you say, 15 years out, use what's available to you. If being a lazy beach town at the end of the road is all good, okay, all good. There are other places that could take up the mantle of being a blue economy hub. But if you want that and the benefits that go with that, get together, figure it out, get on the horse and go.
What are some of the other challenges that you think that need to just be addressed?
Well, I think that is the biggest challenge is who is Wilmington when we grow up? And addressing that issue opens up a lot of doors. Other people take notice. They want to be interested. They want to be engaged. They want to invest. If you have a strategy that, whether knowingly or not, isolates you from the mainstream of change but more importantly, opportunity, you're going to get that outcome. You will be isolated. And if you're satisfied with being an isolated community, okay. If you're thinking that your children want access to a future that's more three-dimensional, then you have to make small sacrifices at a steady pace that gradually lead up to big outcomes. And answering the question, who is Wilmington and who is going to be the leader or the coalition of the willing that's willing to go through. Initially, everybody hates change. Right. And no matter what change you suggest, you could say Santa should come more often and everybody will fight and fuss about it. No, absolutely not. And that's really the question that the community has to address, because once that's done, then the ability of leadership in the community to, when they speak out, let's take a look at this, or I'm investing in that. More people day by day gradually follow on, and it begins to, blossom, literally blossom. So that really is the biggest thing. It's a cool town. I love drinking beer and hanging out in Wilmington. And in the long term, that'll buy you a ghost town.
Yeah.
Especially with all the changes going on. I mean, it really is something where the rate of change, as discomforting as it may be, doesn't care that you don't like it. The workforce challenge in Wilmington, and actually it's sort of the greater Wilmington region, is there's a real lack of economic diversity, and there's a large income inequality gap. A lot of these folks that are in movers to the greater Wilmington area, getting their house on the beach or the river or things, most of those people, they get it, they come, but they're not disconnected from where they come from. Their social networks and their business networks are still where they came from, and they're just gradually migrating into the community. And there's been a lot of feedback, frustration, that they don't invest in the community. They come, they enjoy, they leave. Yeah, yes, there's some money on retail and that kind of stuff. And for folks who have lived there, let alone on the interior counties around that, the options, they're not going to be living on the beach. They want real jobs. And there's not a real diversity of an economic base in the Wilmington area or greater Wilmington area. Drawing in more professional and trade jobs begins to close the gap on that question. And the schools, UNCW, Cape Fear Community College, the other community college, all do a good job in trying to address those needs, but there's no updraft magnet for some of the existing workforce programs. And that's why having more of the right kind of businesses, advanced manufacturing, advanced science and research, advanced professional service around a particular thing, in this case, it's the ocean, is a natural fit to it. Like I said, it doesn't solve the gap, but it closes the gap.
What do you see are the 3 to 5 most important things that Wilmington community and leadership could focus on right now? And how would you sequence those to kind of put Wilmington on the path to this future?
The first is the agreement that they want a future. The power players that be, the influence in town, have to agree that they want a future that builds diversity into it, balance into it. They want things that are compatible with the existing sort of lazy beach town at the end of the road. And yet it can't be, we're going to build condos to the last piece of dirt. Equally so, on the green side, you got to have folks that say, we have to have a business model to sustain environmentalism, So, a war between the last piece of dirt and the only thing allowable is a kayak at midnight, that's got to end. That's just got to end. And there are a lot of people invested in making sure that fight stays going. People make money on that fight. So that's the first thing, is finding what that balance point is. The second thing is, when you're dependent on other people, a lot of the things we talk about in terms of the blue economy, we're a first responder. We're a COVID first responder in terms of providing an economic diversity opportunity. And you got to want that sense of the right mix that fits that balance point. And I think the third thing is, you got to give people the benefit of the doubt. When nobody trusts each other, nothing happens. People snipe at each other. A lot of money gets spent on stupid stuff, just for the fact of, we're not going to let them win. And that's a great way to make sure that your community misses all the opportunities that come to visit. So this is a cultural, political come to Jesus on all 3 points, where it's worth it. I mean, there are a lot of cities that have gone through the argument of, well, we're going to cut the pie into so many minute micro slivers, and it's all going to be negotiated to the nth degree. We'll just find a way to grow a bigger pie.
Yeah.
When, somebody shows up with a really good deal, take it. Everybody's relative share of whatever they're concerned with, whether it be money or privilege or righteousness, you got to get over that. And I'm saying that as a politician who's been beaten to death on those issues. But that really is the key thing, is you got to put your hand out first and try, allow the opportunity to build trust to mutual outcomes. You have to give that a real shot and put your cynicism aside. It may be justified by the time you get through, but you have to give it a shot.
What is your greatest hope for the future?
My greatest hope for the future. That's a really dangerous question. I'm going to say that they stopped serving arrogance and stupidity at the same bar. It is not that hard to talk to other people, even when you have dramatically different points of view. And we're living in a time where there is just mega level changes going on, whether it's the environment or the business environment, politically. And it's real easy to get sucked up into somebody else's fight. And I think my greatest hope is that the next generation, the coming generation, the generations that's going to make all the decisions that impact me going forward, really learn to put that offense of ego thing behind them. It really is. Every major religion in the world says, do as you would be done by. And it is possibly the most ignored and hard to practice little thing in the world. One of the reasons I spent all the time when I was in elected office on the entire education spectrum, pre-K, K-12, higher ed, workforce, is because the one thing nobody can ever take away from you is a good education. They can take your money, they can take your land, they can kill you, but they cannot take away a good education. And the more people that have that good education can put themselves to good purpose on their own accord, or because they sign up with a cool idea like Blue Tech. But education is the great equalizer. And you've got people on the left and the right that both want to turn the education system into their boogeyman for one thing or another. And there's plenty of justifiable reasons they might feel that way, I might add. But when you really look at it, is that is the one thing that really does lift people up. And then they can make their own choices. And if we're all about liberty and freedoms, and the best defense of democracy is education, Thomas Jefferson. And I'm willing to go with that. I'm thinking that's okay.